It's time for the final word in sports all across the state. You're listening to Sports Talk with your hosts, Phil Kornblut, Will Pelagic, and the Professor Tom Hayes. You've been waiting all day, so join the show now by calling 800-956-7266.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome back into Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network. Tonight on the road once again, we are up in the beautiful town of Spartanburg, Sparkle City, as we like to call it, for those of us who've had the pleasure of living or working in Spartanburg at one time or another. On top of that, we're at the world-famous Beacon Drive-In tonight. It's Wofford night here on Sports Talk. We'll have some folks over from Wofford in our second hour, including head football coach Josh Conklin, who is dealing with a disappointing loss by his team last Saturday over at Furman. More on that coming up. Plus, it is a Talking Tuesday from a Clemson standpoint, as Dabo Swinney met with the media today to talk about the big game. It's the game of the year in the ACC. Two undefeated teams to meet. The winner most likely will go on and win the Atlantic Division. Clemson and NC State coming up on Saturday at Death Valley. Got all that covered for you, plus some comments from Will Muschamp as he talks about getting his team better during the off week and the things that they are focusing on, the things that they have to do to make that happen. Phil Kornblut here, along with Will Pelagic at the Beacon and Professor Tom Hayes back at our studios in Columbia. 800-956-7266, the number. If you want to jump on board here early in the program. And Mr. Pelagic has already done some damage here at the Beacon.
Sir. Yes, I have. I already ate what was most of a double chili cheese aplenty. Wasn't able to finish the entirety of that, but in that standpoint, we did some damage. I guess you could say we did some damage.
It looked great.
It was fantastic.
Yeah.
It was great. It's just, I mean, I've been here a couple of times, and apparently I never learned my lesson.
Yeah.
You always over-order when you come here. You always, it's always very deceivingly big.
Yeah.
And, yeah, I'm just saying I'm probably going to be feeling it tonight.
I think that what we need to do, considering how skinny Pro is put him in handcuffs.
Oh, we got to bring him up here.
Drive him up here to the Beacon.
Although he doesn't do red meat. He doesn't do red meat.
Well,
though.
if we force it down his throat,
No.
Force a double cheeseburger.
That would be the last thing you would force.
I mean, they have everything. They have stuff here that Pro would eat. They got salads.
Mm-hmm. They got salad. They got wings. Listen, the Beacon
Seafood?
is world famous. Everybody knows about the Beacon around the state of South Carolina when you think of Spartanburg. So it's great being here. Looking forward to having the folks from Wofford over here with us in the second hour. Athletics Director Richard Johnson is going to join us as well. And, he's a big fellow.
Yes.
He's 6'8" to begin with.
Yes.
6'8", 6'9". He's a large-bodied guy, and I'm sure he's had his share of the food here.
I'm wondering what he could put down here at the Beacon.
Quite a bit. All right, so you were over with the Tigers today as Dabo Swinney was talking about NC State, and, he's not going to sell NC State short by any means. I'm sure he was hyping the Wolfpack pretty strongly.
Does he sell anybody short?
Yeah.
He could make my high school team look like a juggernaut.
Yeah.
But no, plenty of respect for NC State, plenty of history. There are no secrets between these two teams. I talked very much and very eloquently about quarterback Ryan Finley, who's back for his fifth-year senior season, and, of course, talked about how they've gotten to an undefeated record, much like they have, although people will question NC State's opposition to what they've had so far this season. Clemson's obviously played a tougher schedule, the road game at Texas A&M and the home game already with Syracuse notwithstanding. But the fact remains is that this NC State squad has played Clemson very close the last 2 years. They've had very, very hotly contested matchups, and there's a little bit of bad blood. I mean, you remember last year's game where Kelly Bryant had his towel basically stolen by Bradley Chubb on a number of occasions. And, of course, the incident involving Dave Doran and the alleged laptop that was basically of great contention. We found out later on there was only something made by the Clemson social media department there on the athletic department, but still some hard feelings. Dabo says that cooler heads have prevailed, at least off the field, between he and Dave Doran. But some would believe that these two teams are going to be a tad fierce toward each other because they're trying to occupy the same turf.
Yeah. Pro, it's got to be a frustrating time for NC State because Doran has had his best teams in Raleigh in the last couple of years. And by all rights, he should have at least one win over Clemson. That game in Death Valley a couple of years ago where they messed up a field goal, then Clemson scored a late, exciting touchdown, I think, to force overtime, and then they won in overtime, if my memory serves me right. By all rights, that looked like an NC State victory. They let that slip away from them. So I'm sure as he looks at coming back to Clemson, he feels like he's owed one there, but they lost a lot of players off of last year's team. They are a team, somehow they've put their defense back together where they're very good against the run. But, Pro, I think right now that this NC State team is somewhat of a fraud. You look at their record and their ranking, and it looks good, but you look at the people they've played, and they've played really nobody at this point.
Well, the one thing you got to give NC State credit for is, at least in the games they played clean. They haven't, had the pistol stuck toward their foot and pulling the trigger on it. So this is a team that Clemson will have to beat, and I think they will beat them, but they won't be playing a team that will beat themselves.
Very good quarterback in Finley, who's an older guy as a transfer, and he's been in this offense for a lot of years. He ran the same offense where he was before he came over to NC State. So this will be a test for the Clemson secondary, and people think if you can beat Clemson, you can't beat them up front by trying to run it on them, but you can pick on that secondary.
They had the playmaker last year, Jalen Samuel, of course, who was somebody who was a big part of that offense. They've diversified their offense. They rely a lot more on their receivers and, of course, their running game, a heavy play-action look. The one thing I think is going to be very interesting to see is that this will be the first real test for Clemson's secondary since the Syracuse game and even going back further to the Texas A&M contest. they really had some mistakes in that part of the field during both of those teams, and even last year when they played Syracuse. And I think that they were able to kind of, I guess, not necessarily whet their appetite, but they were able to get more against Wake Forest because of their defensive line and their front seven able to get home and force them behind the sticks, get them in basically down in distance where they were going to have to go long, and it didn't necessarily tax the secondary as much. I wonder just exactly how much progress has been made by that unit because of the fact that when we saw them against Syracuse, they were without Mullen, they were without Fields, and then they were without also a couple of other players. They were having to go to true freshmen at one point, and Kyler McMichael, to try and basically float, if you will, against the Syracuse Orange. So I'm wondering just how much that unit has progressed because they're going to get their biggest test of the season so far this Saturday.
All right, couple of quick notes on South Carolina. The Gamecocks went back to the practice field this morning. Of course, it's their off week, but they went back to work on themselves primarily. Will Muschamp, we'll hear from him a little bit later on. He wants to see his team improve in the running game on both sides, both running it and stopping the run. And also, of course, they're going to focus on catching the football before looking downfield and looking for a place to run, eyeing that ball all the way into your hands. Corey Banks is leaving the program. He has announced a transfer.
Redshirt sophomore who was in the program for 3 years from Tyrone, Georgia, Sandy Creek High School in the 2016 class. The reason we got tipped off on that is that his name appeared in the NCAA transfer database / portal that went live yesterday. Basically, the way this works is that the old process was you announced your intent to transfer, and then you had to write a letter, and basically the schools that wanted to contact you had to write the school to kind of get permission to talk to the guy that would want to transfer. But now, basically, all you got to do is announce your intent, and then your name gets put into a database within 2 business days. It is 2 business days later. Names are starting to appear. His was one of them, and USC has confirmed his ouster. He's leaving the program. He'll have 1 year left.
It's called the waiver wire.
Yeah, you know my feelings on this. I think you're stepping into another level of recruiting that's just going to become a major focus area of coaches and teams during the season. I mean, this is something now, you're going to probably have coaches assigned to watching that wire. That's a good way to put it, waiver wire. You're going to have coaches assigned to that and starting to make contact with these guys early on. I think it's a mess, but we'll see how it all plays out. Also, we got some information today that South Carolina is still working on the process of finding its December 1st opponent. From our source, we're told there's 3 that they're looking at, they're talking with, they're dealing with. We don't know the 3. I would assume Marshall is still one of them since that was the original opponent.
And they need a game.
Yeah, they need a game unless they play in their championship game, but it's still something that's a work in progress, but we do have it down to where it's 3 teams that they're talking to now. Back from the Beacon in Spartanburg in a moment.
Sports Talk is the sports talk show of Main Street, South Carolina. From the coast to the mountains, we cover it all.
We're back at the Beacon in Spartanburg, the Beacon Drive-In. Will Pelagic, Phil Kornbluth, Professor Tom Hayes back in our Columbia studios. We are here for our Palmetto Pigskin Preview Live from the Spartanburg outlet known as Wofford. Wofford College taking on East Tennessee State. It's homecoming at Wofford, and they've been on the road quite a while, Corn. 4 consecutive weeks on the road for them, and a very, very odd schedule there for Josh Conklin in his first year, and you wondered whether or not it was going to catch up to them, and then it did last week against the Paladins, going up there to Greenville.
Yeah, they opened up with wins at home against the Citadel and VMI, so they did the military part of their schedule to open the season. Then they went to Wyoming, and then they went to Gardner-Webb, and then they went to Chattanooga, and then last week to Furman. And, Furman, much like Furman did last year, they got off to the slow start, and then Furman got a win, and they took off from there and made the playoffs. And so really that game last Saturday that's huge for both teams. Obviously, it's a big rivalry game, Southern Conference game, but Furman really needed that game to kind of get its season back in the right direction, and they got it. Now, this Saturday, Wofford is at home to East Tennessee State. East Tennessee State, right now, your leader in the Southern Conference. So makes this a huge game for both of these teams. Wofford knows it can still win the conference, share the conference, whatever the case may be down the road if it can win its games. But they've got to bounce back with a much better performance than they had against Furman. Remember, Furman quarterback accounted for all 5 touchdowns, threw the ball well against the Wofford defense last Saturday, so they'll have to improve on that. East Tennessee State, 4-0 in Southern Conference play. Wofford's 3-1. Mercer and Furman are 2-1.
A lot of folks tweeting us at SportsTalkSC wondering what your cuisine du jour is going to be today. Which aplenty will you try, Corn? Just because they've seen me put my mouth where my money is. I'm wondering where.
But you know what? You're right. This has a much bigger menu than you would just think. You're thinking hamburgers, cheeseburgers, and things like that. But they've got chicken, they've got seafood, they've got barbecue, all kinds of stuff. I'm probably going to hit the. Probably something on the salad side, because as I continue to reshape the bod, I don't want to take a step back. It's all about taking a step forward. I thought you said
you were fasting like the last couple of days.
You reshaped your body tonight, but in a different way.
Well, I'm only trying to continue the dad bod revolution that is happening with my midsection.
Which is what?
The dad bod revolution. It's a nice cushion.
Oh, is that what it is?
Yeah. I have a little My Pillow, just basically right there underneath the chest.
All right, 800-956-7266 is our phone number. Let's hit the phones for a little bit. Then we've got Dabo Sweeney coming your way, Will Muschamp, and the folks from Wofford. So we go to Cody in Mount Pleasant. First up tonight here at the Beacon in Spartanburg. Cody, how are you?
Hey, doing well, thank you. Hey, I'm reaching out to you. There's a lot of talk around here about the carry-on, obviously. And I guess with Tennessee coming up in a couple weeks, coming off the bye week, you think there's any way they can potentially maybe jump up out them, and then we see the carry on for maybe a series or two? I'm a little surprised we haven't seen him yet this season with the new redshirt rule, but just wanted to get you guys' thoughts on that, and I'll hang up. Thanks.
In my opinion, if there's a DeCarrion Joyner package, we would have seen it by now.
Yeah,
in my mind. I mean, this is the thing, and I know that because he's a local kid, he's going to get a lot of attention, and people are going to want to see him in there. But the fact that we are in Game 6 or past Game 6 now, it tells me that they don't trust his ability to run the entirety of the offense. They just don't. And I think because of that, you're looking at a situation where the future at quarterback is not the carry-on Joyner. It's the guy who comes in next year from California, Ryan Litsky.
Yeah, wouldn't disagree with that at this particular time. I would be surprised if when they play Chattanooga in the week before the Clemson game, if things go well and they've got that lead, that you wouldn't see him maybe play. You can play him. He hasn't played any games, so he's got the wiggle room in terms of the 4-game rule. You can play him at that stage and get a little bit of a look at him. Now, this week, they're going to be in practice using a lot of the freshmen. You might see some some freshmen emerge from this week to play bigger roles moving forward. I got a feeling you're going to see a lot more Dylan Wanham at right tackle moving forward because he has come on, he has played better, and he stepped in for Blake Camper and played some the other day against Texas A&M, and I think he accounted for himself pretty well. I saw some plays where he stoned the guy off the edge, but I also saw a play or two where he was pushed right back into the quarterback's face. So it's all about learning the techniques and having confidence there when you're a true freshman like that, regardless of your high school build-up and your star rating. It's a whole nother world when you're at the speed that you step into in the SEC.
Listen, I understand the offense hasn't been very explosive, and Pro, you can help me here, but the fact remains, the thing that people have to get their head screwed on straight on, they are using the entire complement of what they believe are their best offensive options. They're not holding anything back. There's no grudges. There's no reason why a certain guy is not playing. There's a reason that guy's not playing is because he can't play, in my mind.
Well, you know, it's people going to do that with the quarterback position anyway. It's just like what did Fran Tarkenton once say? He said, everybody loves the backup quarterback. Why? Because he hadn't done a damn thing yet. That's what Fran Tarkenton would say. But I will say this about DeCarrion Joyner, and I think I get this from Bobby Bowden, because I think Bobby Bowden got chastised some years ago when he was still coaching, when he said he had throwaway plays. And the guy said, well, wait a minute, you know, every down is important. He said, yeah, but I like to show the other team something to make them think. And I'm not so certain you just trot DeCarrion out there to make your opposition down the road just think, will they bring this guy in and what does he bring to the table?
Corn, as the world turns in New York, you were wondering when Zion Williamson's name was going to make it into the courtroom in New York. Mm-hmm. The answer is today. In a taped conversation that was not allowed into evidence today, this is per Dan Wetzel of Yahoo, Merle Code and Kansas assistant Curtis Townsend discussed the recruitment of Williamson in arguing for admission, a transcript that was read by the Code defense attorney. Between me and you, he asked about some stuff, he being Zion. I know what he's asking for. He's asking for opportunities from an occupational perspective, for cash in the pocket, and asking for housing for him and his family. According to Curtis Townsend, who's a Kansas assistant, I've just got to try and work and figure out a way, because if that's what it takes to get him here for 10 months, we're going to have to do it some way. It was denied the evidence, limited context, but the fact remains the conversations were had. So the thing that I keep talking about is the fact that we're talking about just a couple of players. This is evidence that this was rampantly going on, and the thing that gets me, Corn, is that while the FBI and the NCAA are trying to argue bribery and trying to hold these schools hostage, the schools were not only complicit, they were engineering these conversations.
Which makes Mike Krzyzewski look even more foolish based on his comments yesterday, which I still cannot believe that a man of his stature would say what he said when that was addressed. And I got to believe at the ACC press conference next week in Charlotte, with all the national media on hand for that, both he and Roy Williams are going to have to stand up and take a hard position against this, and can't just stand there and bury their heads and say, nothing to see here, folks. We got nothing to do with it, when everybody, well, you got to be careful how you draw conclusions. But when the feeling is that when you're talking about the elite players in the country, and you see where Louisville has gone down, you see where Arizona has been mixed up with it. Now you're seeing Kansas. There's no reason not to think Kentucky, Duke, North Carolina, Syracuse, the teams that deal in that market, okay? You cannot not think. I'm trying to choose my words carefully here.
It's hard.
You cannot just excuse them and say, because Krzyzewski says nothing to see here, that it's not possible that it's happened. And, you know, Williamson was part of an AAU program that was funded heavily by Adidas. It was I'm trying to think, was it coached by his father? Was his father the coach on that team? I don't remember exactly, but I think he was heavily involved with it, obviously. And, you know, that's one of the things that was pointed out about Marvin Bagley III. The way they got around it with Nike was that his father was the coach of the team.
Yes.
So they could pay him. legitimately whatever he wanted to coach that team as long as he delivered his son to the right place, which was, of course, behind the scenes what they were doing. Back in a moment.
We're back on Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network. We're from the Beacon Drive-In in Spartanburg. Come out and see us, 800-956-7266. You wanted at least more on this SC Supreme team that Zion Williamson was on, his AAU team. Guys like Jaquel Moody, Quincy Oglesby, Dentarius James, Kyle Tracy, Caleb Sansbury, Chandler Lindsay, Akeem Lawson, Bishop Richardson, Grant Singleton, Sedarius Bowser, Delmar Moore, Josh Drennan, Derek Sinkler. I mean, these are all highly recruited guys.
Well, and what I was pointing out, too, was, again, talking about, like, in Bagley's case, the fact that his dad was the coach of the team allowed him to be paid by the shoe company that was sponsoring that team. I'm pretty sure that was Nike. And, of course, Duke is a Nike program, and so he goes to Duke for 1 year. And I think Bagley was from, like, out in Arizona, right? He didn't grow up around here.
Yeah,
but Zion's deal was with Adidas, was it not?
His deal was with Adidas. I'm pretty sure his dad, Lee Anderson, was the coach of the team. Now, I don't know, again, anything. There's been no allegations, except this is the first time Williamson's name has come up, is what you read to us earlier in the testimony today.
But it was not admitted in evidence. And, of course, Lee Anderson was the head coach of SC Supreme. So it's obviously something where the connection there is easy to be made.
Yeah. So, anyway, it's the only thing I'm trying to go back to saying is I was shocked by what Mike Krzyzewski in particular said yesterday to the media. I think that either he is just trying to hide something and hope that it goes away, or he is totally purposely trying to be out in left field on this thing and hoping that they don't get caught up in it. Because how could a guy who sits in a position where he does on top of the college basketball world, he said he knew nothing about what was going on. He was paying no attention to it. How is that even feasible for a guy like Mike Krzyzewski to say that?
I'm not surprised.
Because you can't hide. I'm not accepting this concept that he's in his basketball cocoon and he's so tied up with his team, 22 hours a day, that he's not aware of this college basketball changing trial taking place in New York.
Here's what's going to happen, Cord. One of these guys, whether it's Self or if it's somebody else who comes out, Self is going to have to go down, and he's going to have to drag everybody else with him. That's what's going to happen. Someone's going to have to fall on the sword and pull the rest of the entire establishment down with them, because none of these guys is going to go off on their own unless they're caught red-handed.
Don't you think Pitino would have done that? I mean, he's as much a Hall of Fame coach as any of these other guys. And he took the fall.
I think Pitino is more, I would say, not in denial, but I just think that he has his own version of reality, if you will.
Yeah. All right, 800-956-7266. Let's go to Hank in Columbia. Up next with us here, Sports Talk. We're at the Beacon in Spartanburg, where folks are coming in and picking up dinner, and some are taking it home, and some are sitting here with us and chowing away. What you got, Hank?
Hey, Corn. First, Zion's name did come up on one of the wiretaps early, where they said they were going to try to get a deal for him. They just didn't say that he knew anything about it. It said he was like the next person after Bone that they were going to make a deal for. It was on one of the early wiretaps or something. But
you're talking about? Did you say Williamson?
Yeah.
It was in one of the when the thing first broke.
Yeah.
They said that they were going to put together a plan to try to lure him to Kansas. On one of the Beatles guys on wiretap. So this wasn't the first that I heard about them talking with him now. Or not talking with him, but trying to make a plan for him, because he kind of came out and said he didn't know nothing about it. But I wanted to go back to when you were talking about the quarterback situation for him. Yeah. And this is the thing, and first I'll say this. I think Bentley is your quarterback for this year, and I don't have anything against Bentley. And I think Bentley is probably the best option, which is why they put him out there. I don't think the coach put somebody out there if they don't think that that's their best option to run maybe their full offense and have the most options. Sometimes you can put somebody out there who gives you limited options but gives you a different look. I don't have a problem like whoever said having a guy go in there and show some different looks, because even with Alabama right now, they've showed the last two games some looks where they have Hurts and Tua on the field at the same time just to make defenses think. And they've run a couple of plays to make people have to work on it. But for Will, one thing I don't agree with Will is that because you haven't seen somebody on the field, is that they can't do it. Or they're not doing it, because you remember Muschamp recruited Will Greer, and Will Greer sat for a year at Florida. And Florida had quarterback issues when they sat. Now, sometimes these folks sit because they need maturity or need to be able to learn the entire playbooks and all of that. Some coaches will throw them just out there. But when Will Greer stepped on the field after sitting a year for Muschamp, in 6 games before he had the PED thing, he definitely showed he could do it. Now, somebody that first year who could have been complaining about the quarterback situation at Florida could have said, well, obviously Will Greer can't do it because he's out on the field and he's there.
I'm not saying that Carrion can't do it eventually. I'm just telling you they don't believe he can do it now. They believe that he gives it is more of a detriment to their offense to put him on the field in a limited capacity where they know they're limited and they know he can't run the entire thing than to, go with what they're doing right now with status quo with Bentley.
Let me say this. It's way too early, and people today just want to rush everything. It is way too early to dismiss Dakereon Joyner. And I think, Hank, what you're saying is right.
I'm not dismissing him. I'm dismissing him as an immediate option.
One thing about Muschamp, he talks about player development. That was the thing about Spurrier. Spurrier was never one to worry about recruiting rankings or trying to recruit this highly rated guy. He tried to find guys that he could coach and develop. He was a big believer of getting them in your system and player development. And Muschamp continually says this is a developmental sport, which is true. There's no reason not to think that they can't take Dakereon Joyner. And if he's committed, look where Kelly Bryant went from his first year at Clemson as a quarterback to where he was when he left. Mm-hmm. He was a very useful throwing, running option as a quarterback. All right. So he went from really not having that option as a thrower to becoming one. But Joyner has got the same kind of skills and the same kind of issues as a passer. So you've got supposedly one of the best quarterback coaches in the country working for you. Who's to say he's not going to develop him over the next year or two into an excellent passer?
Well, Will, let me jump in here because the key point when you look at a guy like Dakereon Joyner, and we saw this when Sylvell Newton had his sample size with Spurrier, and of course with Connor Shaw. The interesting thing about all those three guys is they were very dangerous on the football field, not so much as they were tremendous passers, as the fact that they could all three use their legs, and all three had tremendous success on third down conversions because of the use of the legs. That's what those type of quarterbacks can bring to the table is third down conversions. When you're in that third and fourth yard conversion, they don't have to throw it up. Listen, they don't have to hand it off.
Part of the problem with Gamecock fans who are wanting Dakereon in there now is because they are aroused by what they see up the road at Clemson. They think, oh, well, Clemson took a true freshman quarterback and plugged him into their offense, and now they're running their offense the way they are. Dakereon Joyner is not Trevor Lawrence. He's just not. No matter how many times you saw him throw the ball up and down the field at Fort Dorchester, does not mean that he can do that at the college level right now.
He was an Elite 11 quarterback.
Can he get there eventually? I'm sure he could.
Yeah, but I wasn't talking about his throwing ability. I was talking about his ability to use his legs on third down. That is a look that really throws defenses off. You'd be surprised how those linebackers come up and they open passing lanes. And Connor Shaw was great at that. Is because the threat of they thought he was coming out of that pocket, and they
but
would
he's
come
Kellen
up.
Mond last year, and he's completing only 50% of his passes.
Give him a chance. Give Peace a chance. Give Dakereon a chance. Let's go to Alan in Spartanburg for now. Hold on, Alan. We'll come back to you. We got a break is coming up. I'm sorry. So if you'll hang on, we'll get to you. We got Dabo Sweeney coming up. We've got recruiting coming up for you as well. No, nothing from Dante Scott. I'll give you a heads up there. It's going to be a week from today before the 6'6" big guard, small forward from Philadelphia announces his decision. So that remains something that is on hold at this particular time. And the folks from Wofford will be here in hour number 2. Looking forward to visiting with them, including head football coach Josh Conklin, who I'm sure is putting his guys through their paces this week after that loss to Furman. We are at the Beacon here in Spartanburg. Come on by and see us. Get yourself something delicious to eat. Wave at us as you go by, and we'll be back in just a moment.
These guys, they never sleep. Check them out on the web at SportsTalkSC.com. Now, more of Sports Talk on the South Carolina Radio Network.
This is a busy segment. We got Corn's recruiting report upcoming.
Maybe.
We're going to hear from Dabo Sweeney.
For sure.
But we can't refuse a call from Spartanburg while we are in Spartanburg. 800-956-7266 to
Alan, right here in Spartanburg. What you doing, Alan? Come by and see us.
Hey, guys. Sorry I couldn't make it to the Beacon. Tell Steve Duncan we said hello, and I'm sure he's being a great host.
They are being fantastic hosts, Alan.
Did you eat a plenty?
I did. I had
Will did.
A double chili cheese aplenty is what I had.
I'm surprised you're able to sit up and talk.
It's getting more difficult by the minute, actually.
Yeah. We've positioned him in a very convenient location. You know what I mean?
Yes, it is.
I have to dart. If I have to dart, I'm ready.
Let's hope it's just a dart.
What I wanted to ask is, Vegas has got a 17-point spread with NC State and Clemson.
Yeah.
And I just wonder, they're apparently not taking the game very serious as far as it being a close call. And I just wonder what the spread was last year or the years that it was very close.
And we can go back and look that up for you. And we'll pass that on to you. Anything else on your mind?
That's all I wanted to know.
What is your favorite dish here at the Beacon when you are able to come by?
It's a chili cheese, definitely, with a side of a onion ring.
Oh, that's exactly what the big boy had tonight. Well, he had a double. You had the double, right?
Last year's spread was 10. Clemson won by 7, so they did not cover.
Okay. And what was it? Okay, the year before, was it close or the year before that?
I'm getting it. Hold on.
While he's looking that up, have you ever had the gizzards?
No, never have. I've never been brave enough to do that.
They got livers, they got gizzards, they got chicken, they got wings.
Too much for me, Corn.
They got everything. And hey,
give me some gizzards.
Okay. So last year, or 2 years ago, it opened at 17, got all the way up to 20.5, and ended up being a one-score game.
Okay.
I think Clemson puts the hammer down Saturday.
Do you think?
I don't think NC State. First of all, they're a fraud at 16th ranked right now. They haven't played anybody. They really have. Look at their schedule. They played James Madison. They have played. Give me a second here. They have played
Boston College.
Boston College, which I still don't. They played James Madison, Georgia State, Marshall, Virginia, Boston College.
Now, which game was canceled? West Virginia.
I'm sorry, Marshall was West Virginia was canceled, right?
Well,
so they played James Madison, Georgia State, Marshall, Virginia, Boston College, and they have scheduled East Carolina.
You mean the same
to make up their game?
You mean the same Virginia team that just beat Miami?
Same one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I think
you're now telling me Virginia's a good opponent?
You don't go into the Carl Smith Center and expect a rout. I'm telling you.
Well, Corn, I'll tell you this: the key point about breaking up that point spread is I think the magic touch that NC State has. We always talk about Dino Babers against Brent Venables. How about Elijah Drinkwitz?
It's exactly my point.
Their offense has really scored against Clemson. Now, Clemson had to score, I think, 1 or 2 special teams touchdowns in Raleigh to make that score a little bit larger than it was. But Elijah Drinkwitz's offense somehow is a really puzzle for this Clemson defense.
Well, not only is there seems like a bit of a virus in the computer chip when it comes to NC State against Clemson, there does seem to be a tad bit of bad blood and very little secrets between Clemson and NC State. That's part of what Dabo Sweeney had to say when asked about the Wolfpack in his Talking Tuesday time with us earlier today.
They're going to run the ball. They run the stretch. You know, they're a big RPO team. They're a big play action team. They're a big pistol team. Pistol play action, pistol boots, a lot of screens, shots, bunch of tricks. I think it's on our breakdown. I think it's about 14% of their offense are tricks. You know, what we would call some type of trick. You know, flea flickers, double passes. You know, all kind. You know, I think it's just they call that stuff to help them. You know, yeah, they want it to hit, but even if it doesn't hit, they feel like it helps them, you know, keep a defense on edge a little bit, and future defenses that they're going to play down the road. So, but they do what they do. You know, I mean, they're a lot of motions and shifts, and the biggest difference this year, I think that they're really high on their receivers, and they should be. These are really good players, very, very skilled guys that they have. But probably the biggest difference is they're a little bit more – they've always been a heavy 11 personnel team. They're a little more 10 personnel this year as opposed to 12. You know, which they still get into some 12, but breakdown percentage-wise, it's not – it's a lower percentage than it's been in the past. You know, that big number 42 and 6, them two tight ends they got, they're good players, but I think they've featured their receivers a little bit more. And this quarterback is he makes everything go. But it's all built off the run game. It's all built off of that.
Do you see the past several years this game between Clemson and NC State has gotten pretty contentious? You have players stealing towels and coaches alleging illegal laptops. What's your message to your team in terms of
players stealing towels and coaching? Coaches, I haven't alleged any laptops. I did want an investigation on the towel stealing. And Dave sent me some Adidas towels back and apologized. And I'm like, well, these are Adidas. These aren't even our towels. So I guess Chubb still got them hung up in his apartment, wherever he is. Who is he with? Who's he with? Broncos. They're in Denver somewhere. But no, you know, this is an incredibly competitive game for sure for both teams. Both teams want to win. We have had some crazy stuff though. I mean, we had y'all remember Isaiah Battle punched some guy that one year. Oh my God. At the end of a game, he just lost his mind. And then we had one of their coaches pushed maybe Deshaun. I can't remember, one year. And, you know, I had to call him and apologize for Isaiah, and he had to call me and apologize, for his coach pushing Deshaun on the sideline. And then, last year, I didn't really understand the laptop stuff. I'm not sure but that was, it was all good. I get along fine with Dave. I mean, but it's just a very competitive game. They're a good team, they're, like I said, well coached, good players. And that's why both teams want the same thing, and they want it bad. And that's why this has been a very competitive game.
I don't know, Cohen, when I saw Dave Doran at the ACC kickoff, he seemed very I don't want to say that there was still some beef there, but he still believes that Clemson is the hunted, and he prides himself on being the hunter.
Well, I think that's true. Nobody's going to disagree that Clemson's not the team everybody's shooting for in the ACC.
I think teams are starting to get a little ticked, if you know what I mean. They're ticked at having them at the top of the mountain.
You know how you change that, don't you?
Well, you got to beat them.
That's how you do it. You don't let a game slip away from you like you did the last couple of years, and especially that one 2 years ago in Death Valley.
It's not Dabo's fault that Doran's got Crisco on his hands.
Yeah, so you want to bring them back to you, you have to go out there and beat them. Let me knock out the recruiting very quickly here before we get to the top of the hour. Then Coach Conklin from Wofford is here, coming off the practice field, and he'll join us. Want to tell you about cornerback Keyshawn Cobb out of Fort Valley, Georgia, 5'10", 190. And he was at USC for their recent game, and he's very interested in South Carolina. And they are showing interest in him. He calls South Carolina his number one school, though they haven't offered him yet. Jacksonville State has offered him, but he is in communication with Travaris Robinson, and they do talk. He's also been to games at Clemson, Tennessee, Georgia State, and Jacksonville State. He will return to USC, and he also wants to get back to Clemson and Tennessee. Clemson target offensive lineman Will Putnam of Tampa will take an official to Florida State this weekend. Defensive lineman Jakeem McKenzie of Wake Forest, North Carolina, has Clemson in his final six with North Carolina, Wake Forest, Ohio State, Tennessee, and UCF. Stratford running back Mario Anderson committed to Charleston Southern. 2020 receiver Jalen Coit of Sherrall was offered by Indiana. As I mentioned earlier, 6'6" Dante Scott of Philly will make his decision known a week from today. Top of the hour break, we got the Wofford folks coming up here on Sports Talk at the Beacon.
Round 2 of Sports Talk up next with your hosts Phil Kornbluth, Will Pelagic, and the Professor Tom Hayes. Don't leave us hanging. Join the show, 800-956-7266.
Okay, we're back. Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network. We're at the Beacon, the world-famous Beacon in Spartanburg tonight as we have our Palmetto Pigskin in-season tour continuing, and we are here to visit with the good folks from Wofford, and Coach Josh Conklin is with us here at the Beacon. First of all, welcome in. Good to see you.
I appreciate you having me.
Thank you for joining us so soon after practice, and I know you probably wanted to get right to practice Saturday night after losing to Furman earlier in the day. How's practice gone this week as you try to put that loss behind you?
Well, our guys are, I think they're a group that's used to winning. They've won a lot of football games here, so they responded the right way. Sunday was a hard day looking at them in the locker room after that game. They knew that, they got outplayed, and we felt like we got outcoached in some areas on the field that day, and that's never a good feeling. So there's a little bit more seriousness and intensity and focus, and, guys wanting to go back and get the job done. And you could feel that there was some relief today, being our first day back on the practice field, to kind of get it out of their system and move on. The big thing that I told them was, we got to make sure that we don't turn one loss into 2 losses, put it behind us and move on.
Yeah, I know you don't make excuses and not to take anything away from Furman because obviously they played very well. That was the last game of a 4-game road trip. Mm-hmm. You did have an off week mixed in there as well. So you've been away from home for a long, long time in terms of playing games. Were your guys at all feeling any sort of leg weariness or travel weariness, anything like that?
I don't think so. I think we've played some physical football teams, some physical football games here in the past few weeks. Chattanooga was a physical game. It was hot. The accumulation effect of that can sometimes not be beneficial to you as a football team. But, like you said, I mean, there's no excuses. We got to tee it up. We got to go play. And we did not do what we needed to do. So they played really, really well. I felt like they had a great game plan offensively. I think they've got great coaches down there. They're doing a tremendous job. And, they executed at a really high level.
What do you learn about your team going through adversity of this nature? Not just this game, but I mean the Wyoming game, a game that you guys were in and you could have, gone ahead. You were ahead late, and I feel like you learn more in a loss, and it's probably easier to teach players after a loss, especially these two emotional losses you guys have had to go through.
Yeah, and I think you do take a long, hard look at yourself as a football coach, and you're kind of evaluating. For me, the first time going through it as a head coach, you're looking at how is the head coach going to respond when we lose, and you've got the players that are looking at you. I think that's a big piece of it. And like you said, it's easier, obviously, to win, or it's easier to learn the lessons when you lose, unfortunately, because there's probably a little bit of heightened awareness and disappointment. And you understand, man, maybe what Coach said is exactly right. So from that standpoint, they were emotional losses, but we responded after the Wyoming game, and we'll respond this week.
After you come off a long road trip like this and you self-analyze what you've done offensively and defensively, do you try to work on perfecting what you've done already, or how much do you think that we may be able to throw in a few more wrinkles offensively or defensively?
Well, I think anytime that a team beats you or a team out-executes you or a team exposes maybe some weaknesses that you have on offense or defense, you're going to definitely look at why that happened and why that occurred. Sometimes because you didn't put the guys in those positions during practice. That wasn't the case for us offensively or defensively last week. Sometimes it comes down to those teams out-executing you within their scheme, and that happened a few times, obviously, against Furman. But I told the team after the game on Sunday, it's not broke. We don't have to fix. We just got to strengthen it. We got to make sure that we look at all the things we got to as a staff in terms of what we need to fix, on the front end, and have answers quicker during the course of a football game. And it's funny because a week ago, everybody's patting you on the back, and we got a top 10 offense. We got a top 10 defense. You go out on Saturday, you don't do what you're supposed to, and then all of a sudden, everybody's questioning, are these guys going to be able to get it back together? We'll be fine. Got a good coaching staff, got good players, and we're looking forward to getting back out there.
Josh Conklin, Wofford football coach, with us here. We're at the Beacon in Spartanburg tonight. You've got East Tennessee State coming up for homecoming. They are the current leaders in the Southern Conference. What a year they're having. 6-1, 4-0 in the league. Randy Sanders, the coach, who has, of course, a history in the SEC, well-respected coach, and obviously doing a heck of a job. This is a relatively new program since they restarted. What's gotten them to where they are to this point in the season?
It's interesting, and you're exactly right. I looked at something today, an article that he had in the media about, I think maybe he's had 3 losing seasons his entire coaching career, something like that. I mean, that's incredible when you think about that. So he's a guy he's a winner. He's been around winning football programs. He's been around winning football coaches. He's got an idea as far as how he wants to run a program, and you can definitely see that from the top to the bottom, offensively and defensively, how they're approaching it. He's got the guys believing. That's probably the biggest thing right now. They're believing in what they're doing. And, from his offensive background, he's doing a really nice job, figuring out how to win those close games at the end.
One of the things I know that we talk about a lot when you have a first-year head coach is how they imprint their brand on the program, how they kind of make, the Josh Conklin. What does the Josh Conklin Wofford team look like? As you sit here halfway through your first season, how much does your team look like what you want them to look like?
We're a work in progress, for sure. I think sometimes the common mistake that people may make is we are Wofford. We've got a good, solid culture in place. But this is not, this is not Coach Ayers. I got hired here, and I came here not to hold the line. And I told our group that again on Sunday. I'm not here to hold the line. We're here to move it forward in every aspect of the football program. So as good as it has been here for 30 years, we got to find ways to make it better, and that's always the challenging part.
You know, we think about Wofford, we think about the offense and the ground game, and that's still there. But defense, you guys have been very good on defense, especially against the run. Has that been your little touch with your background, with your touch coming in, and what you've added to the program?
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to, I'm trying to bring that aspect to it. We have a great defensive coordinator. He's got a solid background. I've got a pretty good foundation in the back end. So, yeah, I mean, I meet with the defensive staff primarily, and that's where I spend most of my time for sure. But smart guys do a great job on that side of the ball.
Yeah.
Well, talk about your players, coaches. You know, Mike Harris has been at Wofford for an eternity, but now this looks like your team. Were you surprised that they were able to just turn the corner and accept you as their coach as quickly as they did?
Not really. I think the guys are a resilient group. I think that, they understood the vision when we spoke to them in the spring in terms of where we wanted to go and how we wanted it to get there. I think there's some staples in terms of principles and values that I carry that are probably similar to Coach. There's some other things that I probably do maybe a little bit differently as well, and they really embraced that. They accepted it. And they like some of the changes we did on offense and some of the changes that we've done on defense. And, that those changes are always good things. It can always bring some, life into the program.
Well, we want to thank you for coming out here. You know what you got for coming out here, right? You got the Sports Talk Kiss.
There you go.
Pretty much a guarantee for victory. Not 100%, but we're right about 95%.
Last year it wasn't all that lucky, Corn. We were getting
that's because you came on board and you kind of jinxed the Kiss.
I did not jinx the Kiss.
You've now been ingratiated, and now the Kiss has taken over. So you're in good shape for Saturday.
Well, I'll tell you what, if it's that easy, you guys should come up here more often, and I won't spend all those late nights watching tape.
Man, you can spend more time with the family, the whole deal.
That's exactly right.
You mean more double chili cheese aplenties for me? Is that what you're telling me?
How's he look, do you think, after eating the double chili cheese aplenty? Does he look like he's
fantastic
blown up
shape.
A little bit?
In fantastic shape, I think.
Good luck to you.
Yes,
we thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, Coach.
Appreciate
it. We'll
talk
talk to you again soon.
Thank you.
All right.
Take care.
Josh Conklin, football coach at Wofford, as we're visiting with the Terriers tonight here on Sports Talk. The athletics director, Richard Johnson, is coming up next with us here on Sports Talk. We'll be right back at the Beacon.
Sports Talk is the sports talk show of Main Street, South Carolina. From the coast to the mountains, we cover it all.
Coming to you live from the Beacon in Spartanburg, it is the edition that involves Sparkle City with the Palmetto Pigskin preview, although probably talk more basketball with our next guest because basketball season on the horizon and the very statuesque Richard Johnson joining us here, the athletic director for Wofford College and the Terriers. Some football to talk about, but some basketball to talk about. You were talking about your opening basketball game against that school that you beat last year that happens to wear a certain shade of blue that we don't like here on this side of the North Carolina, South Carolina border.
Well, we don't like to talk about that because we don't want to make them mad any madder than they already are.
I don't think it's possible, Richard. I don't think it's possible.
Richard Johnson is our guest, the AD at Wofford. Before we get into all that, let's talk about what's happening up in New York. I'm sure you're keeping an eye on the trial up there of the shoe execs and the agents, the runners, the coaches, and this thing gets more and more intriguing by the day as we're seeing the covers being pulled back in a lot of places where people have pulled hard to keep those covers in place. Yeah. As an AD, what do you see is going to come of this once it's all said and done?
It's hard to say. You know, Kyle, anytime we try to reform, there's always reasons why we can't, right? Yeah. But I think this time there's a real push on a national level to get some external people involved in the process in terms of investigations. If there's allegations of impropriety, I mean the FBI, that's pretty serious.
Yes.
And so I think there's a realization that things are a little bit out of control in certain institutions at certain levels. It's really hard for me to talk because it's so foreign to us. You know, at our level in the Southern Conference, you just don't see that kind of stuff. And,
right.
and I never ran into that.
Gee, that's funny. Mike Krzyzewski doesn't see it either.
Well, but I mean, again, you know, I kind of laugh with some people. I go, you know, if you're.
Did you read what he said yesterday?
I did not, but I knew that he had said. I think earlier I'd seen something where he said he hadn't run into that.
Well, he just said there's no. He called it a minute issue,
a blip on the radar.
A blip on the radar.
I have no way of knowing how many. Yeah. I know some have done it, but I mean, you get guys like Mike, and you get Duke, North Carolina. Some of those programs. I mean. We kind of laugh and said, hell, they don't have to cheat.
Yeah.
You know, they're so good.
Right.
But I think that it goes to integrity and character and do people, human nature, do people take shortcuts?
But actually, I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
They don't have to cheat to pull a guy away from
right.
Wofford or Clemson or South Carolina. But when they're battling each other for that top 10, there's like 10, 15 guys every year that the Blue Bloods go head-to-head for. Well, how does Duke get one over Kansas or Arizona gets one over Kentucky? I mean, to me, it raises a lot of questions.
It does. But again, I go back to just at our level, you know, what we're selling. And the guy you just left was at a Power 5 school. And on his interview, he said, you know, I was sitting in home and all I was getting questions from the parents were, how are you going to get my son to the next level? How are you going to get him to the NFL?
Yeah.
And he said, I realized now that I got here, I didn't want to be here. I want to talk about what I'm going to do for him in terms of graduation. Yeah. I want to talk about what I'm going to do for him post-graduation, you know. And I think that's what, at our level, that's what we deal with. You know, the guys that come to Wofford and play professionally, play overseas, but they have other options. And I think that's the thing. A lot of these kids, they don't care about the education. They just want to go somewhere, and that's where the problem lies. I think the external influence of the shoe companies has not been a good thing. It hasn't been positive. The AAU programs that are sponsored by the shoe companies, that's very problematic. And I think the more that we can get it back into the scholastic realm, back into the high school coach, I know that they see so many kids in the summer and they don't want to do away with summer recruiting. But, you know, 40 years ago when I started, you know, summer recruiting was minimal.
Right.
You know, you recruited through the high school coach. And I think that solved a lot of the problems.
Yep.
And I'll ask you a variation of the question I asked Frank Martin yesterday. What is the avenue for positive change as a result of all this?
You know, I mean, it's gotta help happen at the NCAA level, and you know, Dr. Emmert and others up there as senior leadership and the NABC. I mean, they're very aware and they're very engaged, and I think the NABC is very active in sending out things about integrity and character. But you know, character and integrity, they're hard things to legislate. I mean, in any walk of life, you see people that. If the dollars are such, I do think the money's made it such that it's very tempting for people to break rules and to to act inappropriately because of the compensation level. They want to keep those jobs.
Yeah, I want to go back to something you kind of mentioned, and you mentioned the NCAA and the leadership up there. And one of my big arguments has been, the NCAA can legislate everything that it wants to. As we know, they used to legislate you couldn't give a hot dog to a player. They've loosened the reins there quite a bit. But I still believe that one thing they could do, instead of tightening up on recruiting and trying to reduce it, they've opened it up even more. Yeah. I mean, they're letting the coaches now reach down into the 8th grade, into the 9th grade. They're letting agents now reach into the 8th grade, into the 9th grade with these kids. And I don't see how that is good for anybody, not for the kid, not for the families. They might think it's a great idea that little Johnny in the 9th grade gets a call from Mike Krzyzewski or from Dabo Sweeney or whatever the case may be. But 4 years of recruiting and going through that has got to affect you in a lot of different ways, not all that are good. Why doesn't the NCAA see this as the problem and reduce the recruiting, try and take recruiting down several notches as it pertains to college athletics? I know that's how you acquire your talent, but you've got to constrain this.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think it's just a challenge. And when we talk about the NCAA, we're talking about Wofford. We're talking about Furman.
You have a vote, don't you?
Or
your president.
Yeah,
or somebody.
I mean, we are represented. So I've served on the championship committee for football. And as chair last year, I sat on football oversight as an ex officio member. So you're in the room, you're hearing the conversations about recruiting. When ADs at SEC schools are getting up and saying, we got to reduce the number of headsets, I mean, seriously, so that, and these are Power 5 ADs, so that we can get, and they got 48 guys on headsets on football games. And he said, and these guys you're limited to a number of guys on staff. I think it's 11 on staff, 4 GAs. And so they're trying to limit those headsets to 20 to 23 people, and 3 of them are just so people can stat and hear the play so they can stat. And he said that maybe that will reduce some of these people. I mean, those programs have so much resources.
Yeah.
And the NCAA, when we tried to restrict the restricted earnings coach, right, in basketball,
right,
you saw how that went, right,
yeah,
with the antitrust and a big settlement. So there's limits to what the NCAA can legislate. So it's a challenge.
We're here with the athletic director of Wofford College, Richard Johnson. We do want to at least talk about what's going on with y'all. You have homecoming this week. You mentioned basketball season on the horizon. What do we have in store this weekend for East Tennessee State?
Well,
you're hoping to win.
I'm hoping to win, but they're a very good program, and they've got a terrific coach and AD. I think one of the things people say, how did East Tennessee, they hadn't historically been good. Why is that? Well, they dropped the program, lack of interest. Lack of interest, in my view, many don't. Had a bad place to play. It was a sterile environment.
Yeah.
You go up there now, they've got a nice new facility. It's outdoors. People are tailgating or doing football things. And it's re-engaged that community and hence revitalized that program. So stronger football programs are for the Southern Conference are benefit to all of us. And the fact that they're 4-0 right now, and we've got to win to keep pace, and they've got a very good defense, and so our offense will have a challenge, and hopefully we'll be able to score some points and get back on track.
You've got to be pleased with what Coach Conklin has done.
Tremendously,
through half a season.
Tremendously pleased. You replace somebody who's been here for 30 years and has a sterling record of accomplishment. That's a hard thing to do. People don't, when I laughed, somebody said something to me, said, well, when I made the transition, well, Mike Young, I said, well, yeah, he doesn't look like me, does he? Because for 17 years, you thought a basketball coach was 6'8" and a biscuit away from being heavy, right?
Yeah.
Now, where I had to go back, you don't look like a basketball coach. You don't look like Mike Young, right?
Yeah.
And so I think, Josh is going to he doesn't look like Mike Ayers. He's not. But he's a Mike Ayers protege. He's got the best of both worlds. He's familiar with the system. He worked under Coach Ayers for 3 years. He's married to a third-generation Wofford family. He gets us. He wanted to come back. And you throw on top of that new experiences, SEC, American Conference, ACC. So he brings all that other depth of experience to the program.
As always, we thank you for joining us. Great seeing you. Good luck this weekend.
Thank you.
And we'll see you some during basketball season, I'm sure.
Absolutely. I might even have a ticket for you for North Carolina.
Ooh. You think? You think? Thank you so much.
Thanks, Phil. Appreciate it.
Richard Johnson, AD here at Wofford, joining us. We're at the Beacon in Spartanburg. More with Wofford. We're going to do a little Wofford basketball coming up, a little KT coming up, and more from Dabo Sweeney as well as we continue from the Beacon.
Back at the fabulous Beacon Drive-In here in Spartanburg. Will Pelagic, Phil Kornbluth, Professor Tom Hayes, as we continue here on a Palmetto Pigskin Preview Live Tour. We're going to do a little bit more Wofford here at the end of the second hour, but we did want to at least get one more segment of Dabo Sweeney in before we get to Kerry Tharp, do a little NASCAR talk with the president of Darlington Raceway. Of course, Dabo Sweeney's Clemson offense has looked fantastic, especially with the run game, the fourth highest run efficiency in the country through 6 games, and they have also a guy who is the top 5 rusher in rushing efficiency, and Travis Etienne certainly has been a big part of that. Sweeney talked about the run game and how things have progressed. It's just because people have had the opportunity to mature over the course of the last couple of months and across the offseason.
We've been a really power counter, gap scheme team. That's been really our bread and butter. We've been more of a zone team, and we've been very successful there too. But I'm just really pleased with how those guys are running the football. I mean, they've done a great job. And then you add in a young guy like Linjay, who's just going to continue to get better. He's gotten enough of it the first half to where, you know what, this guy could help you in some situations if you need him. And but we're very confident in those 3 guys, those veteran guys, that they have a good understanding, protections, everything that we need them to do. And we just got to continue to get them the ball, keep using them. Certainly Travis has kind of separated a little bit. I mean, he's just been unbelievable. But we're not doing anything different than we've done. We've always been a zone counter power team. A little bit of sweep stuff outside. We'll get some down and around stuff from time to time, and a little bit of just a little bit of pitch outside here and there. But we're pretty much in the tackles running team. We always have been. We're just better. I mean, our guys up front are doing a great job. But even sometimes when we don't do a great job, our backs are better than their guy. You can go back to the Syracuse game. I mean, and we just took a lot off the quarterback because, I mean, I just felt like we just needed to eliminate. He just needed to breathe. And the best way to do that was let's just let him hand the ball off, and let's not have to make him process everything and feel like the game's got to be on him. And so we just went to, all of our called runs, protected runs. And I mean, the numbers were against us. They were not good numbers to run the ball. And you can go back and look at them. There was unblocked guys. I mean, we blocked the guys we're supposed to block, and we could block, but there was unblocked guys, and our guys just made them miss. Just beat them. And so sometimes that's just what it comes down to. And, that's where we're different. This time last year, we were just very green, very inexperienced. Fisher, first-year starter, didn't play a lot as a freshman. Played, but hadn't been in that role. But our best guys were him and Etienne. Et was a true freshman, and he certainly didn't have a good foundation as far as ready to go be a complete player. And we weren't as good outside. We just weren't. We were green outside too, and we've ripened up. So I think it serves us well. But those guys up front are doing a good job, man. They're doing a really good job. They love to run the ball, and especially when they know they got guys back there that make us right more times than not.
That's Dabo. A couple bit more from him tomorrow. We'll also try and get you some more Muschamp tomorrow as the Gamecocks prepare for their open week.
All right, very good. Let's turn our attention to racing. Being here at the Beacon in Spartanburg, it just feels like this is a great place to talk NASCAR and racing as we welcome
some NASCAR hats around.
Yeah, we welcome in the president of Darlington Raceway for his weekly Tuesday chat with us, Kerry Tharp. KT, how are you?
I'm doing good. I bet you at some point in his career, David Pearson has graced the doors there at the Beacon.
I would not be surprised.
Yeah, Bud Moore and the like. But it's great talking to y'all, and enjoy being on the program as always.
Yeah, thank you. Good to have you with us. And let's talk about Talladega this past Sunday. Typical Talladega race. A lot of wrecking late. A lot of unexpected developments. Who you thought was going to win as the the laps were winding down, ended up not winning. And Eric Almirola gets the victory. How about all the changes in the last 2 or 3 laps of that event?
Well, I tell you, it was like you said, it was vintage Talladega. It looked like Kurt Busch had the race in his hands. And you know, lo and behold, he runs out of gas there at the end on that last caution. And Eric Almirola at the right place at the right time. I think he led one lap, the last one, and that's the most important one when it comes to NASCAR event. And so, really happy for him. He's a super guy. He's a great ambassador for the sport. And I know he was very, very excited. I mean, he's punched his ticket now to the round of 8. And so, but yeah, there was some action in there. There was some give and take. And certainly, you know, a lot of times the car that you think has got it wrapped up and is going to win, it doesn't work out. And we saw that Sunday at Talladega.
Do we hear that more at Talladega than anywhere else? The winner led one lap. It was the right lap to lead. It was the last one because so much happens in the last lap or two at Talladega that changes everything that you've seen all race long.
I think so, Phil. I think that track, even more so than Daytona, is the track that, you know, expect the unexpected at the very end. I mean, I was there when Brad Keselowski, who hardly anybody knew, won the race. You know, he was leading. He blocked Carl Edwards and sent Carl Edwards up into the catch fence. You know, I was there with David Reagan. David Reagan won at Talladega. And so, you know, it's very, very unpredictable. You know, you get there at the end of the race and you think this guy's got it wrapped up, like we were saying, then all of a sudden he gets caught in the draft and somebody gets slingshot up to the front or there's an accident. People get caught up in it, and you just, you know, like you said, all you got to do is lead that last lap. And the start-finish line at Talladega is so much different than any other track that we have. It's up near the turn 1. And so you can be, you know, leading coming down the front stretch, and you still got to get to almost to turn 1 to get to the start-finish line. I've seen a lot of guys. I remember one year Dale Jr. was leading coming around turn 4 and got wrecked up on the front stretch, you know, getting ready to go take the checkered flag. And so it's a very unusual racetrack, a very unpredictable track, but I think that's what makes it ultra exciting.
I know we saw Rex KT, but how surprised were you that we didn't see the quote-unquote big one?
Yeah, that was a little surprising, Will. You know, sometimes you see it, you know, you can go 40, 50 laps there at Talladega and nothing happened, and there's sometimes single file, and then all of a sudden somebody gets out of whack, and you lock up about 15 or 16 cars. We really didn't see that on Sunday, and I'm not sure exactly why, but you know, there were some incidents there at particular times of the race, some late cautions and so forth. But you're right, we didn't see the one that took out 10 or 15 cars. And I've been there before where we've had 16, 17 cars, and I've seen it before. We've had 7 or 8 drivers at the care center all at one time. You're talking about chaos. You know, that's what it becomes. But we didn't really see that on Sunday.
You know, we don't use the term much in NASCAR because we think of the human element calling momentum. But a guy like Almirola looked like he had a chance at Dover. Then the caution comes out, and he loses his chance. 1 week later, he's got a championship in Talladega. A momentum shift like this, just from week 1 to week 2. How dangerous is this racing team now as we go forward in the playoff?
Well, you make a great analogy there, Tom. I mean, Eric Almirola has kind of knocked on the door several times this year, and you hit the nail on the head. It's over. He was likely maybe one of the best cars, and he just you know, had a few missteps towards the end. And I mean, right now he's in the semifinals. He's in the Elite 8, if you will, of the playoffs. And so I think he's a dangerous race car driver. I mean, you look over there, Stewart Haas Racing right now is likely to have half of the 8 in the field. You know, Harvick is going to get in. Boyer's going to get in. Kurt Busch should get in. And, of course, Eric Almirola is already in because he won. So,
all right, hey, KT, I hate to do this. I got to throw the checkered flag at you because we're flat out of time. Thanks for the visit. We'll be right back.
The guys are always checking email. Send your comments or questions to talkback@sportstalksc.com. Now, more of Sports Talk from Columbia's Main Street.
We were just talking about this during the break. You can't come to Spartanburg and not go to the Beacon. And we've had a lot of great hospitality here from the folks here. Thank you so much to the folks who've been hospitable to us here over the course of the last 2 hours. And thank all the Wofford people for coming out as well. And we have one more of them here with us here on Sports Talk.
We got to get one more call.
Need another call it from our man here.
Yeah. Can you? Oh, he got stopped. He's going
to stop and
some of the customers.
We got to get another call it out.
There's one more call it.
Call it. And a double chili cheese with it all the way. And bacon, apple, melon, egg, flesh steak. And a full front light, 2 breast steak, flesh steak. And a hot dog.
I was wanting that.
I think that's exactly what you ate.
Literally,
all of that.
All of that. That's good stuff.
And
now we turn to the pride of Marietta, Georgia, Corn.
Yeah, Jay McCauley, assistant basketball coach with the Wofford Terriers, joining us because they had just finished up practice a little while ago. And you guys will once again be talked about the strong contenders in the Southern Conference. But the schedule you play, you make noise nationally too. And you're opening up with that crowd from Chapel Hill on November 6th. How's practice gone to this point?
It's going well. Thanks, guys, for having me. And that wasn't me singing the Beacon song.
No, it wasn't.
So, listeners, that wasn't Jay McCauley, but it could be sometime.
Yeah.
But practice is going well. Yeah, we get tested early. We always play a tough non-conference schedule. Coach Young does that every year. It's usually a top 25 non-conference schedule. We obviously opened up with the Tar Heels. They're a little upset with us, but our guys are excited about that one, obviously being here in Spartanburg.
How often do you think about that game? It's probably hard to go through a day without thinking about that game.
Yeah, it's something I think not only the school's looking forward to and our guys, but our community. It's already sold out. It's going to be a great sporting event. And our guys are working hard every day just trying to get better. So
how did you guys deal with the aftermath of that game? Because basketball, until you get to the tournament, it's not a one-game sport. It's not a one-game season. I mean, you got a bunch more games to play after you beat North Carolina. Can you take us to those days after, how you got your guys back down to earth, or were they a mature enough group to handle it themselves?
You know what? We had come off a few wins to get back on track leading up to that game. And the unique thing about the North Carolina game, it was our last game before we broke away for Christmas break. So all of our guys' families were there, which made it really cool because after the game, after we celebrated for quite some time, they all left to go home for 5-6 days for Christmas. And so did the coaches. I mean, we obviously went recruiting, but everyone kind of got to disperse, celebrate for that night, and then we came back after Christmas for league play.
Yeah.
So it was a little bit of a unique deal in that we won and everyone kind of went their own way.
You could soak it in for a little while.
But we did not sleep that night.
I can imagine. It starts with Fletcher McGee, of course. What a great player he is. What a great season he had last year. Can you pile any more on top of him, or do you want to take a little bit off of him and distribute to some other people this year?
We're probably the deepest we've ever been, Phil. Guards, bigs, interchangeable parts. So I don't know if we're going to take any off of him, but we certainly got more weapons to put around him and to balance some things out. We had 4 scorers in double digits last year, and we were number 2, I think, in the SoCon offensively. So with him coming back and, the other double-digit scores, he's continuing to be our main threat coming on the perimeter.
You talked about playing North Carolina, of course, with Roy Williams, but what about some of the chess matches you will be playing as far as the non-conference schedule is concerned? Because you got a guy who's going back to his alma mater by the name of Tubby Smith. You get to play, and you get to play Oklahoma against Lon Kruger.
Yeah, and I think that's a testament to Coach Young and his relationships in our profession. I'll tell you what, guys, just being honest with you, it's hard to schedule here. Coach Young has beaten a lot of Power 5 schools, and not a whole lot of people are signing up to play. But Coach Young knows a lot of people like Tubby Smith, like Lon Kruger, guys that want to play us and, meet the challenge. We're obviously a lucrative RPI or this year they're calling the NET rating. So heading into the tournament, will be a pretty good high number for those teams.
You picked up a transfer in Chavez Goodwin. Chavez.
We call him Chevy.
Goodwin. Yep. He's a Columbia kid out of Hammond. I remember him from the recruiting day. Started out in Charleston. Comes to your place now. What can you expect to see out of him? Nice body, good shot blocker and rebounder.
Yeah, he's a great kid. Obviously, an hour and a half down the road. We've known him a long time, but he brings, like you said, some length, some versatility, a guy that can really rebound at a high level and alter some shots in the paint. We haven't really had that around here, and Brent knows this. We've always had 6'5", 6'6" post players that are tough and gritty, and Chavez is tough, but he's got a little bit of difference to him as far as his length. So we're looking forward to adding him to our lineup.
I know that, as an assistant recruiting, you mentioned it earlier, I see a national footprint when it comes to this school. I see Chicago Simeon High School. I see St. Paul, Minnesota. I see North Carolina. How much does what you guys did last year enhance that footprint?
It's amazing. When we go out on the road in our profession, when we go to other cities, when we go to restaurants, the first thing that people come up to us is, hey, you guys are the school that beat North Carolina. And I know it's been 12 months since we played that game, but it speaks volumes. It does help us recruiting as far as getting our Wofford brand out there, which, as you know, is important. Us being a school in the South, we're a school that has to recruit nationally for academics. So getting out in those areas and already being familiar with our brand, that's important.
And it sets a standard, too, for the guys who come here. They'll see that. They'll see, the artwork. They'll see the highlights. They'll see all that. They'll say, hey, this is what you can do here.
No, absolutely. And it's a standard Coach Young has set, not only just beating North Carolina, but going to multiple NCAA tournaments. And I think that's another thing that people realize. You guys are always the team we fill out in our brackets. Mm-hmm. And having that combination plus an academic reputation, I think, can be a pretty powerful thing.
This guy's going to be a head coach someday. I can tell.
Well, he's working his way up that ladder. Real quick before we let you go, you guys shot over 41% from three last year. I mean, that's fantastic. Does this team have that same shooting eye? Can you expect that same kind of success?
It's funny. We did an inter-squad scrimmage 2 days ago, and we shot 56% as a team from three and made 22 threes.
Wow.
In 3 10-minute segments. So when you add 4 shooters on the perimeter, that's a pretty good threat from deep.
Has Pegram improved a lot inside?
He has. His foot is healed. He had a major surgery on his foot in the offseason. He's been practicing in the last month and a half. Played a few games in Portugal to get his confidence going. He's a huge part of our leadership in our locker room.
We thank you for coming over.
Thank you, guys.
Joining the trail from Wofford over here to the Beacon tonight, all you guys coming off practice courts and practice fields. We thank you very much. Good luck this season.
Thanks a lot.
Tell Coach Young we'll be in touch and watching closely.
We'll be bothering him, hopefully.
I will.
Don't go away because I've got an email you need to see.
Sounds good.
Before you depart, okay? Got a little inside scoop for you.
Uh-oh.
Great.
Yeah. Well, somebody sent me something to pass along to Coach Young, but I'll give it to you, and you can pass it on to him.
A little game of telephone over there?
Little what?
A little game of telephone? You ever played the game telephone?
I don't play games.
Yeah, that's true.
I'm not a juvenile. I'm not a.
Oh, that's sad. That's the first lie I've heard you tell all day.
I am an older, more established, mature person. I don't play games.
I wouldn't go mature.
Anyway,
okay.
Thank you for coming out.
You.
Ignore this guy. He's got a bubbling stomach.
Stop. Quit making fun of my below the chest area.
Anybody at the rest areas on I-26 between here and Columbia, look out.
Stop.
No, we thank the folks here at the Beacon.
Fantastic.
Great. Yeah, your dish looked delicious, and I'm glad you got a chance to eat it. In fact, you put that on Periscope, did you not?
I did. You can see it on our Periscope at SportsTalkSC.
I haven't been, what's the word? I don't want to use it. I ate with Corey Miller one time in Omaha, and he did a similar sort of thing with his meals. So devoured, I guess, is a good way to put it. So
you were at the Drover, were you not?
We were at the Drover.
Yes. I've devoured there too.
Yeah,
and I'll devour again, hopefully.
Well, thanks to Brent Williamson from Wofford, all the Wofford folks. Thanks to the folks here at the Beacon. We'll see you back in Columbia tomorrow night.